One of the biggest projects that I've undertaken in my career is the completion of a full-size coffee table architecture book. Now, I was commissioned to do this in 2017, and I undertook principal photography for the first 3 months of 2018. That was January through March of 2018. And this is an opportunity that doesn't come along very often, and I consider myself very fortunate to have been contacted and asked to do this. So I remember I got the initial email in 2017. I was actually driving, being a bad citizen, and reading my email while I was driving, and the email said, my name is Holly, and I am a book editor in New York City. I work for a company called Prestel, which is a division of Penguin Random House, so a very, very big publisher, well-respected all over the world. And we found your website, and we've kind of done some investigations, and we would love to have you photograph a book for us. And I basically replied when I got home, and I said, I'm your guy. I must do this. This has been a career sort of dream of mine, and you can stop your search because I'm gonna be a guy who does this regardless of any other circumstances. So Holly and I, we got lucky. We had a great rapport right off the bat, and we had some great phone calls, and we talked about logistics and how difficult it would be to get access to some of these buildings or houses. A lot of what we were photographing was not only private homes, but also private businesses and some of the more, shall I say, delicate locations in Los Angeles where filming permits are taken very, very seriously, and it would be exceedingly difficult to be allowed in to just use a tripod and photograph as you see fit. So we talked through logistics and agreed that in January of 2018, I would devote the next 3 months of my life to photographing nothing but the 50 projects in this book. And those are some of the most important architectural projects in Los Angeles that were built in the last 10 to 15 years. So it's really a sort of tome, if you will, of modern Los Angeles architecture. Modern as in the last 10 to 15 years. Rather, contemporary would actually be the proper word for that. So, and I was extremely happy with the finished results, but it took an extreme amount of work as well. So in terms of payment, I was paid not very much at all for this. My advance was under $10,000, and keep in mind that is 3 months of work. I completely cleared my calendar and said, I think this will be an amazing opportunity. I've got to do it. So the first major issue was planning all of the shots that would have to go into this book. So like I said, there were 50 locations all throughout Los Angeles. And what I did was I loaded all the locations into a Google map, if you will. I made a custom map and dropped a pin on every piece of architecture in the book. And using Google Maps and some of my intuition from living here for the last 10 years, made a plan about when I would photograph each building, whether that was morning, afternoon, evening, daylight, if I needed to get interior access, or if I could just photograph it from the street. And about half of them, I had to photograph interiors, but all of them, obviously, I needed to photograph exteriors as well. So I didn't necessarily photograph something every single day, but I tried to work as much as possible. I would get up for sunrise, I would be out at sunset, and what was extremely difficult was not only dealing with LA traffic, which was nearly constant, but a lot of construction and renovations were going on, so it made access to some of these things very difficult. I would drive all the way across town only to find out that something was under construction or undergoing renovation, so I had to drive all the way back, and that would be a complete waste of a morning. A lot of what we photographed, as it didn't require interiors, I wouldn't necessarily bother telling anyone what I was doing. I would just roll up and try to make a shot at the best time of day. Now, of course, you can't do that for a house, of which there are a few in here. So we had to schedule things like that and interiors of big landmark buildings like museums and concert halls and whatnot. But whenever I could photograph an exterior without involving anyone, I would just go out and do it. So multiple trips to multiple buildings. I would go back as much as I could in different times of day, different light, different weather to get interesting photos. I basically took this as the ultimate assignment with which I had complete creative control to do anything I wanted. I use this not only to reinvigorate my entire portfolio, but also to create what I think is probably one of the best business cards of all time. If people ask if I can get them published, I can show them this. If they want to see a quick portfolio of my work, I can bring them this. If I go to a client meeting, rather than bringing a custom printed portfolio, a different one for every client, I can just bring them this. Gifts for clients, this. Who's on your coffee table? Me. So it's been an amazing business card. But anyway, back to the photography. It took about 3 months to get everything in the bag, and there were a few buildings where during the winter, the light didn't really hit them at a great time of day, so I had to come back for another week or so worth of work in June. So it was January, February, and March, and another round of shots in June. Now, I snuck into plenty of buildings, plenty of hotels to get everything I needed, and I got quite a thrill actually photographing a few of these projects where I had to get into a parking garage, sneak into an apartment building, etc. to get the shot. So I covered a ton of ground, made a lot of great photographs, was covert, was above board, a little bit of everything. After principal photography was finished, I began working on the post-production, and I edited about 90% of these shots myself. When I got very busy or was under a deadline, I enlisted the help of a retoucher, but the vast majority of these I edited, and I'm very proud of that fact. It was a ton of work, a ton of photographs. I think there's probably like 400 shots in here, and I think I've done a pretty good job of making them all look consistent, given that they were photographed over a almost 6-month span. So let's talk a little bit about the finance of this, right? So like I said, the advance for this was around $10,000, which was not that much money, but you don't really do a project like this for the money. It's to make money off people who see this and hire me for what I was capable of doing with the book. This was an enormous project and encapsulates such a huge scope of architecture that a lot of people who look at it are, not to toot my own horn, but they're very impressed with what we were able to pull off over those 6 months that I was photographing things for this book. It's an amazing, tangible, real manifestation of your portfolio, something that just comes across in a much more profound way than another photographer's website, you know what I mean? So the website can go pretty far, but to have something actual, real and solid that you can show people that proves that you are the real deal and you can complete something like this from start to finish, that's really worth a lot when it comes to getting new work. I consider this sort of just another personal project, and I try to devote as much time every year to personal projects as I can, whether they're architecturally related or just photographing a passion of mine. As you probably know, I freaking love airplanes. So if you're gonna be successful, whether it's architectural photography or automotive or shooting, I don't know, products, anything you can dream of, you've gotta be able to self-motivate and pull yourself out of bed every morning and do something even though you're not getting paid for it. If you average the amount of money that I got paid for this over every single gig, it's probably some of the lowest paid work I've done in my entire career. But like I said, it is a real, tangible manifestation of you as a photographer, of your portfolio, of what you are capable of. And it's very impressive for potential clients to see not only a book like this, but any personal project that you put on your website. It sort of defines who you are as a person, what you love, what sort of potential even topics of conversation or shared interests you'll have with your clients. If you have personal projects on your site, whether it's cars or planes or, I don't know, gymnastics, and a potential client sees that, that's a great in, right? So I consider it extremely important to keep up these personal projects. Like I said, it doesn't have to be architectural in nature, but as long as it's something that you're passionate about, and I am lucky in that I am very passionate about architecture and was able to motivate myself for 6 months straight to get this thing done. It's something that you really need to do. You really need to push as hard as you can to keep your personal work going. And even if you're doing really well and you're cruising, I would try to carve out a few months every year to just devote time to spend to photograph things that you love and that you are passionate about. That is really what's going to drive your career forward and keep you doing the work that you want to do so you don't get burnt out in the long run. Something that I found, surprisingly enjoyable about doing this was knowing that I had complete creative control. I could basically make exactly the photographs that I wanted to make and not have to worry about a client breathing over my shoulder. So when I was then able to take those photographs and put them into my own portfolio, it's a self-fulfilling cycle. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They would see the work that I created for myself and hire me to do more work like that. And that essentially is what's going to stop you from getting burnt out. If you are basically being a pen in the hand of your client's bad ideas, you're going to lose your mind. You need to make sure that you're doing work that you care enough about to motivate yourself every single day to keep going forward. What's also been great about this book is that the initial fee wasn't that big, but I was able to license tons of images in this book to the architects and designers who were featured. Architects and designers, as you know, they love being published. They love knowing that their work is out there, and this opened so many doors. I had the perfect excuse to email every single architect in my city and say, hey, I am going to photograph your project. Would you like to meet me there? Would you like to discuss it in advance? And I probably got at least 50% of them at least on the phone or to meet them in person, which gave me a great in. And then 6 months, a year later, I was able to follow up and show them a hard copy of the book. And now I'm on all of their radar. At this point, I've probably been hired by 6 or 7 of the architects in this book and licensed images to many more. And it's not just licensing images to the architects, but also to the actual institutions that are here. For example, the Walt Disney Concert Hall, the Broads. Some of the tenants of these biggest buildings have licensed the photos that they helped me to make for the book. So the licensing income and income from being hired after the fact has far and away eclipsed what the actual book itself paid me. At this point, I published 3 books. I've done a self-published Kickstarter book. I published this, and I just released an ebook. I don't know if that counts, but it was a hell of a lot of work either way. So I've got a decent amount of experience with bringing my books to press in one way or another. So they all have positives and negatives. The great thing about this book was I didn't have to do any of the design work, any of the distribution work, any of the toughest legwork. Now, obviously, you sacrifice a great deal of money in order to have that freedom. But what was great about the self-publishing was I had a say in every single part, right from the design, the layout, and while that's all amazing, it is so time-consuming. My self-published is a book of aerial photographs of Los Angeles. It is beautiful, but man, was it a pain to get that thing over the finish line. Talking to printing houses, talking to people overseas. Do I want to publish in China? Do I want to publish in Italy? Do I want to publish locally? How am I going to do the design? Everything is just so involved, and if I had known how much work it would have been, I would have never done it. But now that I know, I'm glad I did it. This book was also a ton of work, but I was lucky in that I was able to focus only on the part that I really cared about, which was the photography. One of the greatest things about working with a publisher is they have insane reach. I get messages all the time on Instagram from someone, maybe they're in Germany or they're in Tokyo, and they say, dude, I just saw your book at the MoMA, and I'm like, that's insane. And it's in museums, it's in libraries, and it's still, this was released about 1.5 years ago, and it's still a constant stream of messages and people who buy this and they're posting it on Instagram. It's been really gratifying and incredible to just see all the places that this book ends up and where people are able to see it. Even when I'm traveling in airports, I've seen these in like art book stores at the airport. It's always a little bit of a pinch me moment when you find this in an unexpected place. I didn't tell you all this with the intent of just telling you, go have a publisher contact you and make a book of architecture in your city. That would be a little bit ridiculous and like a very slim chance of happening. But what would have a greater chance of happening is if you were motivated enough to continue doing personal projects that would lead to things like this. Now, I remember when I got that call from the publisher, I told them extensively about all my experience sort of self-motivating, and I'm like, yeah, I flew around the world photographing airplanes, and you'll definitely get the shots that you need. I've done stuff that's way harder than waking up early every morning and going and photographing architecture in my own city. So all of these personal projects, I feel like kind of had a domino effect, and one sort of leads to another and continually get your name out there. So even if it's, you know, making your own self-published book of architecture in your city, or maybe it's a self-published book of something that you are very interested in, whether that's, you know, plants or landscapes or ballerinas, I have no idea, whatever it could be. Make sure that you are, you know, making the time to self-motivate, to complete projects on your own so that you can shape your career into something that you are happy to wake up every day and go to work doing. Just in case you want to know what it's like to photograph one of these buildings on the down low, in the next lesson we're going to do just that.